G'day folks, welcome to this introduction to pretty much an all-in package for War of the Ring. We are using the three main expansions, including the new Kings of Middle-earth expansion. Now, setup won't look too different if you've played the base game. Basically, Kings of Middle-earth adds these new characters. There are 8 new characters, 5 Kings of Middle-earth, who can be swayed to the Free People's side or the Shadow side through corruption. The Free People's player is basically trying to activate these kings, and they will bring special powers with them, special combat effects, special rules. However, the Shadow player can attempt to corrupt them. Now, I'll grab this little corruption board from the side. Basically what they'll do is they will draw corruption tiles from the pool, and they will secretly pick one and then place it face down on one of these sovereigns. Once it reaches their resistance, they become corrupted and effectively become shadow companions, not really companions, shadow leaders in a way, which adds special effects to the shadow player. There are also what are called dark sovereign characters who can come into play, and again they will add that's the golem one. There they are, dark sovereigns who can come into play, and they again new leaders for the shadow player factions, which bring with them special abilities for the game. They're effectively leaders for their armies, but again with special enhanced abilities. So at the start of the game, nothing too much looks different. We are also playing with the Lords of Middle-earth expansion, so you can see the special rings and characters over here, Galadriel, Elrond, and again up the White Ring. What else do we have? We're playing with the factions of Middle-earth. They're off to the side, so actually here are the Shadow player factions, the Broods of Shelob, the Corsairs of Umbar, and the Hillmen of Dunland. They will come into play. Usually you play muster dice or recruit faction dice. So you'll notice the extra dice we have over here on the left. These are the faction dice. This is the new Kings of Middle-earth dice. This doesn't change too much. It's basically an extra dice you can roll to use specifically, usually, well, often, I'm guessing, you'll use this specifically with the new kings that you bring into play. So it's kind of a special dice reserved for their actions and abilities. But you need to replace that with an actual... So if you use that dice, you need to remove one of your other action die from play. There's going to be a challenge here because, as I said, we've got now factions. We have got our sort of faction, I can't remember what these are called, faction cards, faction decks. These are the faction combat cards. I can't remember, call to action cards, something like that. These are the faction decks, the base decks. There are a heap of new cards in these decks as well that come in through the expansions. We've got the special rules for the various characters. The Lords of Middle-earth, so Elrond, Galadriel, again up the White, his new powers with that expansion. And we're adding to that the Kings of Middle-earth. So the Kings, here are the corrupted side. As I said, they can be swayed to either side. So if I can just compare, for example, Brand. So if Brand becomes activated by the Free Peoples, here are his abilities. If he becomes corrupted by the Shadow player, here are his abilities. So he will go either one way or the other. So it becomes a separate little battle within the game to sway these kings over to your faction, which is another, I guess it serves as another element, another sort of side game within the game itself. We've found, playing with the other expansions, that the expansions don't, the narrative remains much the same. The Fellowship is advancing the ring, the Shadow player is trying to take over these Free People cities. All the while, it just adds another theatre of the fighting. The factions become involved. You've got the faction cards and the faction dice, the Lord's dice. It just adds another element. Doesn't take anything away, doesn't really modify the Fellowship path or the war so much. It just adds depth to that story. That's what we found with, again, Lords of Middle-earth and Factions of Middle-earth. Warriors of Middle-earth, I think it's called, not Warriors. Yeah, it's Warriors of Middle-earth, sorry. Warriors of Middle-earth, which adds the factions. So yeah, this is our first attempt with all 3 of those main expansions. It's going to get heavy. What I'm most worried about is forgetting things, because there's going to be now factions. There's going to be the lords, and there's going to be now the kings, and that king corruption, the sort of little separate sovereign corruption ball that we need to have to worry about. I usually play as a Free People's player. I think I'll be playing as a Free People's player again today, and it's difficult for the Free People's player to remove this corruption. It's fairly easy for them to activate a sovereign, but once they start to build up corruption, it's difficult for that corruption to be removed. They basically need to get a companion into the area. So here we can see Thranduil up here and Brand in Dale. We have Dane Ironfoot up in Erebor up here. So we need to get Free People's companions who can activate these nations into those areas to convince them not to be corrupted, which is going to be a challenge. So yeah, all these rules coming together could be difficult. The biggest challenge, okay, so bringing all this stuff together, long term, there are all these extra cards added to the decks, and I've got a bag of all the cards that I've removed, so it's going to be a challenge to undo all this work. If you're ever going to go back to the base game, you have to take all these cards back out of the deck, you have to find them again, replace them with the original cards. A lot of these cards that we've added refer specifically to, for example, the sovereigns and corrupted sovereigns and things like that. Now, to return to the base game, you need to remove all those out. So yeah, I think long term, the idea is that you add these expansions and you play with these expansions every time you play. Once you go and add these expansions and the content, you never really return to the base game. So this is just, as I said, a broad overview of those 3 expansions and the flavor they add. They don't really change the core game rules at all. Rather, they add to it. All of these expansions add new elements. Doesn't really change your understanding of the existing rules in any way that I can remember. Well, perhaps except for the Elden Rings. There's a subtle change, and even then, it's not really a change. It remains much the same, but it's an additional option you can use with those. I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, there's not much that changes. There are options to change, so there are sort of variants that you can use, but we're not using those. We're using basically the rules as written, the base games, for those 3 expansions. All right, folks, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and take care.